welcome to episode 266 of Checkpoint Chat. My name is Alessandro Barbosa. I'm joined by Matthew Figueroa.
How the turntables.
I know, for once, well, actually not for once, for a change, my video, trash. Your video, good.
Natural light by the power of the sun that has appeared for the 1 in 10 times this year. That's great.
It couldn't have come at a better time, honestly. And I reckon within the next hour it will be gone.
It will be gone. You're not even wrong. It's just peeping over the horizon like good night. I've had a hard 10-minute day. Goodbye.
It's like that sun on the Teletubbies. It's just like goodbye, and it's like going over the hill. Except this time it's just the River Thames. Just like,
well, it's just a British sun, like, oi, goodbye.
Oi, fuck off, mate. That's Australian. Probably. I don't know.
I mean, it's not far off. It's okay.
Oh god. Yeah, we are recording this at a somewhat strange time. It is evening of Tuesday. So it's not dark near me. I just have like horrendous lighting in my office currently. So if there's no natural light, then it's just shit. Whereas it's only getting to the evening. So
it's 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Also,
God bless time zones.
Yeah, this is a quote unquote normal / regular episode. So anyway, this bad boy will be live as soon as I've edited it after this recording. So if you're listening right now, it's either Tuesday or Wednesday morning. Surprise. Sorry, we missed the Monday episode for this week.
It's been a strange, well, actually, not strange. Totally woke up on Sunday with intentions to record. And then my PC just decided to not have a Sunday and
or have a Sunday.
Have a Sunday, yeah. And eventually I just had to reinstall Windows, which was great. I tried to debug for a while. I tried to, restoring and doing this and that, and just would not get to the login screen. Would post just fine, wouldn't get to the login screen, and so that was just why we didn't record on Sunday. So
love that for you. Love that for us.
Yeah, I absolutely love that for me. I was so happy with everything that happened. I was planning to just have a good chilled Sunday morning, record a podcast, not think about my PC. Abby, why? And the day was just like, no, you cannot have this. Absolutely not. Reinstalling Windows nowadays it's not horrendous.
It's so straightforward, actually. It's
actually really straightforward, and it downloads from the cloud. You can just kind of like do everything, automate it all at once. I didn't need to create like a bootable drive. Look at this cat.
Yo, what a unit.
Just a menace.
Oh, so fluffy.
So yeah, it was kind of easy getting it all installed, but just the process of it. And now it's like, now I have to reinstall these programs I don't have and figure out what I do have and what I don't have and kind of piece it together as I go along. So yeah, absolute worst.
When last did you reinstall Windows? Like prior to this weekend?
I do not know. I could not tell you, honestly. And maybe it's about time, because like I changed a bunch of hardware. I got like a new CPU, I got a new GPU. Maybe it was just like, hey, you've done too much to me. It's time.
We're living in 2025, but we're still not there where, PCs are okay with just being a couple years old with different hardware configurations and running smoothly.
Yeah,
it's nothing beats a clean install. Always feels good. It's just such a pain to do.
That's true. Sometimes it's required because you've got all this trash on there that you didn't even realize you still had. But in this case, it was just annoying because like I needed it to work at a specific time, and it was just like, no, you will not. Like, you have work to do? No.
Tuesday.
Yeah, no. I don't think I will. You
And
know,
you go, you know what? You took your pillow and put it over your PC. It's like, oh, really?
just choked every
Yeah,
single one
we'll
of the
start from
fans.
scratch then. Okay, we'll see.
Unplug each fan slowly. Be like, oh really?
Oh,
Want to play this game? Yeah. Fuck. So yeah, that's why this is now slightly late. I mean, we aim to have a Monster Hunter review out for the embargo, which was yesterday, Monday evening.
Oh,
But yeah,
we
things
still
happen.
fun ultimately. I mean, the game's out on Friday, I think. So
it is out this Friday. Hey,
yeah. So we're a bit late, but we're here before the game releases.
we know you've been waiting for the real verdict on Monster Hunter. You know, there's 60 plus reviews on Metacritic, but we're the one you've been waiting for. We get it. So we're sorry we took so long.
I mean, here we are.
Here we are. So, without further ado,
rigmarole first.
yeah, Checkpoint Chat, talk about video games. But this week, we talk about one video game mostly, and that's Monster Hunter Wilds. Matty has been lost in the wilds. How many hours are you in? Like 40, 50 hours now?
40.
More.
40 hours.
Oh, 40. Okay, I thought you were going to be like, you better pump those numbers up. Waiting for it.
I've seen people online. I mean, we'll get into the nitty gritty. I've seen people online in lobbies and just other hunters I've fought alongside that are sitting on like 80 to 90 plus hours.
Wow.
And
that's wild.
Absolutely
insane.
It's in the name of the game. It's wild. That people have put so much time into this game. But I think for good reason. I think it's important to say, like, well, right out the gate, I love this game. There's a reason I put 40 hours into it. We got code pretty early.
It was like
2 weeks ago.
15th or 16th. Yeah.
Which is like ample time to sink into a big game like this. It's not a quick saunter out in nature. But for context, I think it is important to note that my first real Monster Hunter game was Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch 3 years ago, 2021. And prior to that, I had nothing to do with this franchise. Didn't play World, played nothing before that. And I really got into Rise to the point where I rolled credits on Switch, put 120, 130 hours on it. And then a year or so later, whenever the PC port dropped, some of my friends were playing. I was like I'm really going to play this game again. Joke's on me. I played the game again in its entirety with the Sunbreak DLC that launched, and again on PC, like 100 plus hours. Okay. I love this franchise. Like I'm hardcore into it now. So I was very excited to play Wilds, particularly because Rise, the one I just spoke about on the Switch, it was a Switch exclusive, which came with, scaled back things because it had to be it was running on the Switch. So it differed to World in a number of ways, which weren't immediate to me until I played Wilds. The current one can be very confusing with all the names.
Yeah, World, Wilds, Rise.
Yeah. So it's funny because Rise is like, quote unquote, it wasn't a main entry in the franchise. Let's call it that. It wasn't like a mainline thing. Like Worlds before, it was the big console PC thing, all the bells and whistles at the time, and then Rise was a scaled back, still very good, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a reason I played it for so long, but scaled back in a lot of ways to make it Switch friendly. Yeah. So going into Wilds, it was interesting for me because there are a lot of things I just assumed were brand new features, but upon reading and researching, it's like, oh no, this is just stuff that existed in World that's, it's just come back for this iteration of the game, whatever. So a lot of things that exist here that I'm sure older players of the franchise will recognize immediately. Like, for example, there's a slinger, which is something you can use to shoot different kinds of ammo at the monster. There's like a small thing that you can put on like mantles, which, for example, you can put on like a camouflage mantle, which will hide you from the monster. I was like, oh, wow, what a cool new feature. I'm like, oh, actually, it existed in World, it just wasn't in Rise. So there's things like that I've had to sort of, figure out as I've gone along. But I think my ultimate takeaway from Wilds is that it is a very fair mix of Rise and World, in the sense that it takes a lot of the streamline and / optimizations and certain things out of Rise along with the sort of scale and beauty of World, with power of the PS5 and PC and console, whatever it is. And what you're left with is, I think, again, I can't speak, as a veteran Monster Hunter player that's been with the franchise for decades, whatever. But shit, I love Wilds. I think what Capcom have done is just distilled down, taken lessons from these prior entries and put together like a phenomenal, like, I want to say the definitive Monster Hunter game, but it is a pretty damn optimized and just fun modern Monster Hunter game to play. And it's exactly what it says in the box. If you've never played Monster Hunter before, spoiler, you hunt monsters. Like, that is the core premise, but it's got this interesting loop where the core gameplay is you fight a monster, you carve its parts, you use those parts to build better gear, better weapons, and you go and you hunt bigger monsters and rinse and repeat for as many hours as you want. Because
ad nauseum, yeah.
There's a huge catalog of monsters to go hunt, and they all have different, they can all turn into different armor sets and different weapons. And then when it comes to the armor and weapons, there are different things you can do to like fine tune a build, let's say. So all the good stuff is there. But when I talk about taking lessons from Rise, streamlining, there's certain things where, like, I thought going into Rise, into Wilds, that there's no wire bug, which is a unique thing to Rise, which was basically like a grapple hook. You could use it to grapple around, zip around the map, whatever. However, one thing Rise did have that's made its way here in a different form is Rise had a Palamute, which is basically your dog mount you could use to just get on and run around the map. That didn't exist in World. You had to run around everywhere. In Wilds, though, you get it looks, I've heard the kind of funny podcast like called it's not a chocobo, but it's funny. It's kind of like this big bird.
It does kind of look like a chocobo, yeah.
And it's called a sacred, I think.
Secret?
Yeah. Secret sacred. And that is such a cool little change I think many fans will enjoy and appreciate, because it just streamlines a lot of things in this game. Because I always thought playing, so I keep bouncing between the titles, but it helps me explain why I think Wilds works. When I played Rise with the wire bug / the grapple hook thing that you use to zip around the map, I thought, how the hell did players not have this before? Like, I couldn't imagine playing World where you have to just run everywhere. You can't. There's no like mobility, for lack of a better description or term. However, adding the secrets / sacred into Wilds means, when a hunt starts, you can mount that bad boy. You're on your way to the monster. You're there like half a minute, if that. And then even in combat itself, it really helps when previously your weapon gets blunt in fighting the monster. You need to stop to sharpen it, which means like running away or just waiting for one of your teammates to aggro the monster, and you sit and you sharpen it. Or you need to heal or drink an antidote, which takes time. But previously you had to be stationary to do that, and chances are the monster would spot you and like ruin your day. Now you just get on your secret sacred, and you can do all of that while riding around. So there's just these little fine-tuned things that I think have led to this really, really phenomenal experience for me. And I can, only thing I can say is that I absolutely love it. I don't know, I think you've scratched the surface. You haven't really sunk the time into it.
Yeah, I haven't. I would say maybe if I've even got like 4 hours in would be generous. So 2 very, very different durations of play between us. But I come from the same sort of background as you, in that Rise was the first time I really engaged with Monster Hunter. I played a little bit of Worlds on and off, but I didn't really play with other people, and so I felt I was missing out a lot on that experience, or at least it was difficult to get into because the game is so obscure in terms of it not explaining a lot to you. And so when I got into Rise, we were playing together, and we were kind of like discovering Monster Hunter together. So learned a lot of things off the bat there that translate almost immediately into Wilds. I kind of wish there was better onboarding in that sense, because I just feel like new players are just going to be so lost in this game. It
it's
really just is like, here's the starting weapon. Like it tries to get you to pick a weapon that suits a playstyle you'll like, but even then, it gives you the most basic 3 tutorial messages. Like, here's a quick combo. Here's how to like do that R1 special attack, like where you leap onto an enemy and like do like an animation and it does like a bunch of damage. And here's how to use that new focus
mode.
what it's called.
Yeah,
You like
mode,
hold R2 and you can see weak points on the enemy and you can like stab directly onto them, which feels kind of great. Because you have a training area, just like the previous games, where you can just swap between weapons and kind of get to grips with it. But unless you dive into like the menus themselves, into like the pause menu and look at the control scheme, you'd never actually know what a bunch of the weapon abilities are or how they're meant to work. Like the charge blade, how do you transfer charge from like your shield into your blade and then like burn that?
Yeah, it's very
like swap between the two. How do you change colors on your longsword, for example, which themselves do like different damage types when you do that?
You have to just go to YouTube. Like it's
kind of insane that's it's wild that is still the way to really learn Monster Hunter. And I get that there's a lot of legacy in that all of these weapons exist in the older games, or at least the biggest subset of them do. I don't know. I just think there's always an opportunity to teach new players how to play this, and I feel like that's a real barrier to entry for the game. But other than that, I think it's really good. Like the first hunt, they get you into that hunt very quickly, and the hunt is really fun. It shows off how you move in and around like a small area as the monster kind of like moves away as it takes damage, and opens up like secondary objectives during the hunt that you can partake in. I really like that on the secret. You can have a second loadout. I don't remember if you could do that in Rise.
That's new.
No, okay, that's new. So you can have a secondary weapon with you at any given time. So you can actually swap between them without like having to end the hunt and go back to camp, which is really neat. That's almost like I cannot play a Monster Hunter without this sort of feature. And I do think a lot of the sort of mechanics like sharpening your weapon using a whetstone, you can do that while moving around on the secret, or you can heal. Like you said, I think a lot of it's more streamlined, and it just makes the flow of being in the hunt, replenishing your resources, getting back engaged into the hunt feel a lot more natural than I think previous games did. So yeah, I'm having a good time. I'm keen to play a lot more. The story.
Yeah, let's deal with my immediate criticisms of the game. So don't get me wrong, love this game. But just to briefly go back to the barrier to entry, I've given it a lot of thought, in the sense of like, I'm the first person that will use Dark Souls as an example, where I'll go, Dark Souls doesn't explain anything. You just have to figure it out, and you can go to YouTube and do whatever. And I'm kind of like, yeah, like it's not a rite of passage. Like Elden Ring's this weird middle ground where you can pick up the game and you can sort of get on with it. You know, it's a lot more forgiving and flexible, and that you can just figure out how to play the game. But you get the idea where those games are like, they tell you nothing. You just have to figure it out. But when it comes to Monster Hunter, I feel almost like they're doing themselves a disservice, following the same route, where I worry. Like I do think, like I'd love to recommend this game to people, but I just know some people will play the first hour or two and be like, nah, like I don't gel with this. I don't get it, and it baffles me, because this is Capcom, and I know it's different studios, but in my head I almost envision like a Street Fighter dev walking into the Monster Hunter studios, going, "Show me your game." Oof, this is a bit much. Like maybe we should do a better job onboarding players. Like for Street Fighter, we've painstakingly done like tutorials and like training rooms. Like come to our house. We'll help you get this together. Really good points,
actually. Yeah.
But like that just doesn't exist. It's like to your point earlier, their onboarding is like it's 2 or 3 pages per weapon, but it doesn't tell you anything about the nitty gritty. Like I'm a longsword player only because I learnt it in Rise, and I only know half the stuff from that game. And even going into this game, there's stuff I figured out organically, which is part of the charm. Like, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, oh, like I can do this now. Like I couldn't do that before. Oh, or like this has changed. This has been streamlined. But as a newcomer, like you're just never gonna get that like nailed down until you turn to YouTube. For Rise, I turned to YouTube to learn how to play the longsword. I was like, oh my god, there's things I can do with this weapon that just are not explained in this game. There are 14 different weapon types. It's just, and they all have their pros and cons, and they all have their place. And you like, I don't think there's any right way or right weapon to use a monster. Like the way the game's designed, you can use whatever the hell you want, and you can learn and play the game. I just feel like, why did they not use this as an opportunity? Like mainline entry, put a little bit more effort into onboarding players or having the optional tutorials. As a hardcore player, you don't have to touch that. If you don't care, you just play the game. If I'm a newcomer and I pull open the menu, you know what a difference it would be to go to the training room, like, oh, you're learning longsword. Here's like 3 videos just explaining the basics. Like what a difference that would make to get people into the game. I mean, don't even get me started on like how convoluted the menus are and stuff. Even like it took me hours upon hours to figure out, oh, like this is how I do this and that. Like it just, like they've streamlined it, but there's still a lot of bloat that's like, I don't know, have they kept it because they want to piss off legacy players, or is it just like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I think your Street Fighter analogy is really, I hadn't thought of it like that, because Street Fighter 6 is this really good melding of, this is classic Street Fighter and you can play it in a classic Street Fighter way, but we've got this crazy suite of tutorials and practice modes and even a whole new control scheme, which I don't think is as applicable here, but there is a way for newcomers to get into the game and learn the game in a way that will allow them to enjoy it for years to come. And sure, not every Street Fighter had that before, but I would argue that there are people playing Street Fighter 6 now because it explained some of the intricacies of fighting games to them. And I think Monster Hunter would benefit very positively from that. I don't see any reason why you can just have this onboarding while still retaining the game's, kind of like mystique and also how it plays, because you're not fundamentally changing that.
No.
And I don't think it is as precious as something like a Dark Souls or a Bloodborne, where part of the enjoyment is figuring out that world and figuring out how it clicks. Here, it's just like, you've got, nearly 20 weapons and they all function. They all make this game entirely different, but we're not going to tell you how any of that works. It seems silly to me.
Like, that's it's like, people will disagree with me, but that to me is just it's not a red flag. It's more just like a wasted opportunity. Like Capcom could have done more to welcome newcomers. And don't get me wrong, this game's still going to sell millions, but it could have sold even more.
Yeah. And it's a game I still really enjoy it. And, you have said like you really love this game. It's not, I don't think it's knock on the game. I just think it's something it could be improved on, just so that more people can actually enjoy it on the level that we do, I guess.
Yeah. And then to go back to your points earlier about story, let me tell you, Monster Hunter's strong suit, not story. I don't think it was in Rise. I can't tell you if World Story was any good. I don't know. Wild Story, to me, I did think very fondly of your one analogy when you talk about soup and bread, and how soup is just the vessel to, well, wait, you explain it better, but like soup is just an excuse to eat bread, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
The story in Monster Hunter is just an excuse to go fuck up big monsters.
True.
It really is. It's like, I mean, the basic premise is, it's a new frontier. The Hunters Guild is exploring this unknown land it's supposedly been deserted for over 1,000 years. But there's actually people there, and there's monsters there, which, and the antics that follow. It's this annoying, like the actual story on paper, when you read it, I'm like, it's fun and it's interesting. Like I get what the story is. However, how it's executed is just, I don't know, it's dated in the sense of like,
Mm.
oh, we've got to go fight this big monster. Cool, let's all get on our mounts and we're going to ride there and talk about it. Okay, we're going to fight the monster now. And there's going to be a cutscene and then we're going to get on our mounts and going to talk about it. And then, like it's just strung together weirdly like that. And it's both good and bad because you can roll credits on this game in like, you could mainline it, don't do any side stuff. You could get to the main credits in like 15 hours, let's say. And I will say like 15 hours, you go like, oh my God, that's a long time. In Monster Hunter time, that's not that long. I mean, people play this game for 100 plus hours. What is 15 hours to, get to the real juicy stuff in the game? And the story does like fast track. It's like, cool, we're in this area, we're fighting these monsters. Okay, cool, we need to move to this new area. So it unlocks the map pretty quickly. However, if you're a seasoned player and you just want to enjoy the thrill of the hunt, like it is a grind. You're just going to have to get through to get to the good stuff in the game.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. And I mean, Monster Hunter isn't the only game to have this issue. I think unless you find like some really dedicated lore junkies like Darren, I think the same could be said for like Destiny. Like to get to the real good end game stuff and the loop that is so intoxicating, you have to put yourself through the story stuff. And I think Destiny does that stuff like way, way, way better. But I feel like that's what they're trying here with Monster Hunter, and I just could not care. Like,
but yeah,
like you said, you have to watch these cutscenes, which you can skip, but then you have to do these like extended travel dialogues as you're going to and from hunts, and I just don't care. It's like it feels like it's filling dead air between the stuff that I really want to do in Monster Hunter, and especially so because that part of the game is so good. I just want to get back to that, and it's cool that when you get to credits, you get to do more of that stuff and you're not burdened by the story. But I just think they need to figure out I get why they have a story, like a single player component. You can't just throw this game in and be like, cool, this is just a series of hunts, go at it. But this is just not the way to go about it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because, like I mentioned earlier, tutorials would have been great for newcomers. However, this is a thing that I think targets specifically people new to the franchise. As a veteran, you want to come in and just fight monsters. Like you might care for a story, you might not care for a story. However, if you're a newcomer, it does serve as a nice paced way to like onboard you in terms of like monster progression. It's the typical thing of like, cool, you're fighting like pretty small monsters. They're not too difficult, and as the story gets progressively ramps up to like OMG territory with these huge monsters, like it's sort of drip feeding you and like holding your hand, to get there. I mean, the one thing that you do get pretty early in the game as a good example is your smithy, they'll recommend weapons and armor to you if you have no idea. Like I don't actually know what to build. I just want to be told what to buy. You can do that. The game does let you do that. And one of the better improvements, if you have for the most part, let's say 80% of my 40 hours playtime, I played alone. Not because the game won't be busy, it's just in terms of the launch period, it was only in the hands of reviewers. So lobbies are a lot smaller, a lot quieter. And I've only really engaged with the multiplayer in-game stuff where I suppose I caught up to other reviewers and we all just doing the high level hunts, whatever, together to grind up materials.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult during a review period like this to get a real sense of that sort of stuff.
Look, that said, the last few, I'm actually grateful we delayed the episode by 2 nights because the last 2 nights I've played, I've had some really fun times with complete strangers, just lobbing up, going at it, whatever. But what I want to get to is that if you have no interest, I know there are people who look at these games and go like, I do not care to play with other people. I just want to like lock in, play alone. You can. It's funny. It's called online single player. I don't know why it's called online single player. But you can play this game completely single player. You don't have to have help. Like I didn't have bots help me during my hunts. However, you can get AR companions to fight with you, to take down monsters and do, and they talk and they do call outs and they offer all sorts of benefits to you as a player. So like that's a good change from Capcom. Like that's a step in the right direction. I think if you're new to the franchise, that is there. If you just want to, hone in and play alone, you don't have to engage with other people if you don't want to. It's completely possible.
Yeah, I mean, I played a lot of Rise like that. But I do feel like you're missing out on a component with not playing with people.
For sure.
Yeah, but I don't think it's required, put it that way.
No, Rise was weird in that it was like the first half of the game, it's this mandatory single player stuff. Then there were these like hub quests where it's like, actually you should play these with other players. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, you have the option to, when you join a hunt, you can just go do it alone. You can call in AI companions, or you can put up an SAS flare to have other random internet people join you.
I actually did. I found that quite interesting. That if you put up an SOS flare and no other humans come help you, it immediately populates it with AI.
You can put that off if you want.
Oh, can you? Okay, because I saw it mentioned. I was like, that's actually quite smart, because I assume some of these hunts get a bit overwhelming, and so if you're calling out and no other players are coming, or you're playing in a region where there's not enough people playing, you can still get that sort of experience. But I guess if you just want to play single player, you can do that as well.
I will say it's interesting. Like you mentioned, regional play. That doesn't seem to be an issue with Monster Hunter. I remember being baffled. I mean, Raz running on the Switch was actual sorcery. The game ran well, loaded so quickly, and the online play, like completely foreign to Nintendo, just worked seamlessly. And I remember playing with like people in Japan and America, no delay that I could feel. Over the review period, I've had a look at people's profiles, and I've played with a lot of people from America, interestingly enough. It's very few people from Europe. And I can't tell you I've ever noticed any kind of delay or, the usual high FPS thing like jitters or things like scaling back, whatever. So maybe they took a page from Capcom in that regard as well. The rollback monster fighting code is just like,
that's pretty great. I mean, that's really good, because Monster Hunter doesn't live or die, but it is really about like those cooperative hunts. And I think if you nail that and allow people from all over the world to experience that together, that's a really good experience. I do recall it being pretty good on Switch too, but for the most part, I played with you and other friends that we knew locally, so it was a very different prospect at the time.
I played a bit with randoms, and I was floored by how well it ran on Switch. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think this is a game that could run on Switch 2?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't even know what Switch 2 can do.
I wanted to talk about performance, but that did cross my mind as well. I was like, man, if I could have this game on the go.
My immediate assumption would be no, just because of how wonky performance can be on console.
It's weird, because playing the beta a couple of months ago, I was baffled by how terrible performance mode was. It's like you can have a pretty good looking 30 FPS game, or you can have a smooth running, terrible looking, smeared by Vaseline looking experience. And I'm not usually a visual snob, but even I was like it just looks horrific. Like textures look so low. And I've heard, I mean, I don't know, for context and clarity, I played on PS5. So no idea what performance is like on PC or how it will be at launch. I know in terms of specs, you need a pretty beefy machine to play the game.
That benchmarking tool was quite rough on a lot of PCs. So not sure why.
I think if you can get this game running at 60 FPS plus on PC, you're going to have a swell time. I don't think it's the best looking game. There's something to be said about the color palette. I'm busy
very drab
detouring here, but I showed good pal John Michael a photo of my Palico. I was like, look at this outfit. It's great. He's like, what's up with the colors in the game? I was like, no, I think this initial starting area, it's like a bit deserty. It's a bit bland looking. But don't worry, there are later areas that are more lush and like jungly. But since he said that, I was looking, I was like, man, the hues and the tones and the color palette, it's like they just dialed the saturation down across the whole game.
It looks almost like washed out at times.
Weirdly washed out. Doesn't make any sense to me. So on that front, I'm like, it's a bit of like, in terms of art direction, not like the best looking game I've seen. Visually, I think like it looks good, don't get me wrong, but not the most cutting edge visuals I've seen. That said, if you're playing this on, I mean, even on PS5, look good. I'll get to that in a second. But when you're doing a hunt, you know, on the wind plains where there's a lightning storm happening and there's all these effects happening around you, it looks good. Like honestly, and just the being in that moment, it's like, oof, like this feels so cool, man. Like I'm out here doing the Lord's work, taking down this monster for God knows what reason.
Poor monsters are just chilling. They just want to have a good time, and this fucking asshole on a chicken comes and kills them.
I love the motivation. It's like, no, the Hunters Guild is about preserving the balance of ecosystems. I'm like, nah, fam, you're out here murdering innocent monsters.
It's like those people that go club baby seals because they say they're doing it to protect the environment. Like, fuck all.
I don't know. In terms of visuals, though, on the PS5, I had the same sort of feeling with the main game now as I did with the beta, where 60 FPS is fine. It just doesn't look good. Like it doesn't look good to
me.
30 FPS looks good, but it's 30 FPS. With the balance mode,
doesn't
though,
feel good.
Yeah. If you have a high refresh, well, a 120 hertz monitor, the 40 FPS balance mode, the best way to play this game, hands down. It's obviously not as smooth as 60 FPS, but it looks a lot smoother than a 30 FPS mode. And visually, I can't tell you like, oof, things look like they're smeared in Vaseline. Like it looks pretty good. I've just realized I haven't been playing any footage this whole time.
I just thought you hadn't captured any footage. So I wasn't
that
sure.
is hilarious. I'll add that in a post edit. Oops, that is the wrong one.
Oh, whoa. Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I played the beta, it was quite bad. It was really rough. Even that 30, the quality mode at 30 frames just felt atrocious. The balance mode feels pretty good. I think it feels quite solid. I mean, you can go look at a place like Digital Foundry for empirical numbers here, but based on what I've played, it feels solid and quite stable. And it just strikes a good balance of visually pretty good, and the smoothness is there that I require for a game like this. Now, I will say, this is a game running on Capcom's RE engine, which is, done incredible things with Resident Evil specifically. And I think this is the first real test of it being in an open worldish game. You could say that about RE8, but I think that's on a different scale. And it just seems like the engine's not built for this, or the Monster Hunter team couldn't wrap their heads around how performance worked in an open world like this, because the RE engine has looked a lot better than this in the past, for sure, and run a lot better. It's been very, very good in terms of, performance and visual quality. Resident Evil 8 looks phenomenal. It runs at like 60 frames per second. So I don't know what happened here. I'm curious to see if there was some transitional period with the tools that the team had that they struggled with. But yeah, I think there's a good trade-off here. And from what I can tell, if you've got a PS5 Pro, a lot of these issues are mitigated because it uses stuff like PSSR as opposed to the very first iteration of FSR, which is crazy that's what's being used here. But I do think it's an improvement over the beta. I do think that it's not the best looking game you can buy out there, but I'm glad that I can play it at a relatively stable frame rate and, feel as though it is smooth enough to enjoy my time.
Look, I think it's a good time. I think if you want to take anything away from this, if you're a Monster Hunter fan, I think you're going to have an absolutely swell time with Wilds. I think all the right things that need to be optimized have been optimized. There's a nice big catalog of very, very fun monsters to fight. There are some obviously returning favorites. There are some new monsters. There might be some that I don't recognize from prior entries, but I can tell you I've had an absolutely swell time just carving my way through all of them. And even in terms of Capcom have done this thing which they did with Rise as well. You roll credits at like 15 to 20 hours, whatever your game time is, but the game's not done. There's still story stuff to do after that. You've got to raise your hunter rank level to unlock more story beats, and it's bloated in that way. But it's funny because I think typically Avowed's a good, not Avowed. There are other examples we've spoken about recently where I get cross when games like lock off content like that. It's like Spider-Man's a good example where, you got to go fight crime to unlock the next, the next main mission,
the next story beat,
and that makes me cross. But when it comes to Monster Hunter, it's a thing of like you gotta raise your hunter rank, and I'm like, that's fine. I'm gonna go do hunts anyway to like, I'm gonna go do side quests. I'm gonna go unlock. I want to go get resources to unlock this weapon. So it kind of happens, and I can just like glaze my eyes over. It's not the end of the world.
It's a good loop. It's an intoxicating loop that's just fun to engage.
100%. But then it's funny because you roll credits and there's stuff to do. But then at like the 35, 40 hour mark where I am now, there's nothing to do because Capcom, they haven't like, they're still going to drip feed story stuff into the game. So I'm like, okay. Like I get it, but it's also weird about I've just like I call it a soft ending. I'm like, I know it's not done. There's just more coming. But getting to that point, I mean, and again, like I've played 40 hours just with the longsword. There are 14 different weapon types. I want to go dabble with some of the others. There's just, you can lose hundreds of hours to this game. It's just unbelievably addictive. I can't put my finger on it. It is maybe just that loop of, getting parts, building new weapons, but just the actual fighting monsters. I mean, we haven't even spoken about it. There's this new focus mode, which how did Monster Hunter not have this before? So if you don't know, agreed. Focus mode, when you're fighting a monster, you sort of open up wounds on them, which if you enter you push a button. I think it's L2.
I think it's R2, isn't it?
No, I think
L2.
Maybe. I think I'm getting mixed up. I think it's L2, and then it highlights glowing spots in the monster, and it's like, oh, these are the wounds you've created. Yeah, you're seeing it on screen now.
Yes.
You've opened these wounds in the monster. Go into focus mode, and if you attack them with a special attack, you'll like do more damage to the monster and get parts from that wound. So that's just really fun. Again, like keeps fights engaging. Not only that, you can use it outside of trying to hit those focus modes. If you're busy, if you in a combo and I don't know, the monsters run past you like, oh God, I don't want to end my combo and turn around. You can just activate that focus mode, pan your camera around, and you'll keep doing those attacks, but in that direction that you're aiming.
Yes.
So it's like, man, how did this not exist before? It makes it feel so much better to be more precise with my attacks and whatnot.
It makes targeting the different parts of a monster so much easier, but also just it weeds out some of the frustration of that, because obviously you need to attack and damage certain parts of the monster to get certain resources, and you want those to craft certain weapons. And I remember in Rise specifically, like needing a certain thing to drop, and because the monster died but I didn't do enough damage to its tail or something like that, the thing doesn't drop. This, I think, it still emphasizes that, because I think it is a very important part of the combat loop, but it just, again, it surfaces it in a more logical and in-your-face way. And I think the game's better for that. It's not making it easier or dumbing it down. It's just recontextualizing the thing that's there.
Yeah.
And like giving you more ways to do it. So I like it quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you more to think about. Like, not that it's a bad thing in the standard Monster Hunter loop, but it gives you more to think about than just, attacking the tail or the head. It is like, oh, there's this bit glowing on the shoulder. Like, let me make an effort to get there to do more damage. And now I've opened a wound on the left foot. Like, let me move around the monster to get an attack there to do more damage. It's good stuff. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention earlier, that is a thing from World that was not in Rise. You could do it in Rise. You can mount the monster again here to do like more damage, open up wounds. It's combat is just, I don't know, like, is it hyperbolic to say it's the best it's ever been when I've only played the last game in the franchise? Yeah. It feels like they've really just like optimized as much as they could, for this generation of Monster Hunter.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a good next generation Monster Hunter, because remember, World came out ages ago. Like, World was the one that really kicked off this new era of Capcom. It was before Resident Evil 7 came out, and World sold like gangbusters. It's what, the best-selling one in the series and one of the best-selling games of all time.
It's Capcom's best-selling game at
That's
21 million copies plus, which is just
It's crazy.
unreal. It baffles me. No,
So
not enough.
Wilds has a lot to live up to, in that regard. And I don't think there's anything yet to suggest it's not. It brings its own few tricks to the table, and I think retains most of the DNA that makes Monster Hunter so intoxicating. It's just, can it follow up one of Capcom's biggest games of all time? Now that it's been, almost 10 years since World?
I think World
it's
was no, it's not 10 years. Rise was 2021. World was probably like 2018-ish, I'd guess. 6-7 years ago. Which is a long time ago, to be fair. I mean, the last gen game. Oh.
2018. So 7 years. 7 years is a long time.
Yeah.
To wait for quote unquote core Monster Hunter game. But I think it's been a worthwhile wait, and I'm excited to play this as the weeks continue, because I think, like you said, they're going to drip feed new content.
Yes.
And just taking on hunts with friends is 50% of this, and I'm really excited.
I'm very excited to see it in the hands of fans and gamers. Like, just to touch on the sales numbers of Wilds reached that. I mean, the fact that Wilds did that is like unreal. Capcom's best-selling game. I mean, in a world where Street Fighter and Resident Evil and all these other top-tier Capcom franchises exist, and Monster Hunter, as we said earlier, it's not like this pick-up-and-play game.
Yes.
Wild to me that it's that successful. Like, I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just like, fuck, unreal, actually.
Especially because the series' roots are like in mobile gaming. Monster Hunter on PSP and stuff like that. It was big because people just played it during commutes. You could take on a hunt for like a couple of minutes and feel like you did something. So World was that big, like, oh, this works on a console where people are playing at home, they're not moving about. And I think Rise was more getting back to that pick up and play sort of feeling. And I definitely felt that in terms of the scopes of its hunts.
Yeah.
Rise definitely expands that scope. Wilds expands that scope drastically. And they supplant themselves as two very different types of experiences within this world, and I just want to play more. Really, want to get back to it.
You and me both. I've got the longsword down. Still not mastered it. Still loving it, but I think I'm gonna play some Charge Blade next.
Charge Blade is fun. It's super weird, but it's fun. I've wanted to dabble in some of the ranged weapons. You get some. What is the one? It's almost like a shotgun, or is it like a cannon? So it's
either the
it's
light
ranged
bow gun or the heavy bow gun.
Yeah, I think it's the light bow gun. It's ranged, but not like, oh, I'm always going to be miles away from the monster. It's like, no, you're still going to be in there.
I played. That was the second weapon I played a bunch with in Rise, and it's good fun as well. That is, It's funny how the weapon type you choose can make Monster Hunter feel different.
Yeah. I think that's what's cool. The weapons are like completely different roles in the game, more so than an RPG in some sense.
Yeah.
It does fundamentally change how you play the game.
Light bowgun it just makes it like a third person shooter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, I don't mean it like a dumbed down way. It's just like it kind of feels like an over the shoulder, you rolling around, just shooting into this monster to do damage. And
but even some of the standard weapons, like just your axe or your big greatsword, like they're big hulking weapons, and yes, you're slower than if you've got a longsword or the dual blades, but you still feel quite mobile. You're still dodging, still acrobating in and out of the way, and it's a good time. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Cool. Monster Hunter Wilds. It's out on Friday. I'm pretty sure it's not the last you'll hear of us talking about it, because
I think
I'm going to be playing this for a bunch, in and amongst all the other things coming out in a couple of weeks. Funnily enough, I say this, but because of just schedules and not being able to like really dedicate a lot of time to playing games right now. I mean, I'm still fucking figuring out living in this new space and all of that. I've just kind of been craving comfort food gaming, mostly on my Steam Deck, just because I have like an hour here or an hour there.
Yeah.
And I've gravitated towards playing Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood again.
That's so weirdly specific.
Can't tell you why.
Out of the whole franchise, you're like,
the two Brotherhood. I dabbled a bit with 3, even though I know I don't like 3. And I remembered why I don't like 3. That game takes for fucking ever to get going. It's so annoying. But man, those games still pretty good. And on the eve of Assassin's Creed Shadows coming out,
when is Shadows?
Those games are still pretty good.
Is that March or April?
20th of March.
Okay,
I think it is. I mean, the game leaked in its entirety this week, so that's fun. Yeah, not great. So I suspect review stuff will be coming in soon for that. But that's like it's interesting to play like the old Assassin's Creeds, because Assassin's Creed is not like that anymore. Even Mirage, which was meant to be back to that time of Assassin's Creed, feels so different to Brotherhood and the Ezio trilogy.
That was just Valhalla on a smaller map. It's just ran
pretty much, yeah. Pretty much.
So
it's kind of insane how linear and guided these Assassin's Creed games feel by comparison, despite the fact that they were open world at the time. Yeah, it's kind of neat. It's like cool to go back to these things. I mean, I notice a lot of things now that I'm like, this game in my rose-tinted glasses did things a lot better than this. But it's still a fun time, yeah. Those are the sorts of things I'm playing on my Steam Deck when I should be playing like Monster Hunter or finishing Metaphor ReFantazio, things like that.
Oh, what a game.
Yeah, I've been... game too.
I mean, I've 40 hours in Monster Hunter in 2 weeks is like, it's just taken all my time. But last night, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go climb into bed and play some Enter the Gungeon on Switch. Pick it up again. It's a good time as well.
You cleared a run yet?
No. The game, I'm like, am I getting old, or is this game just notoriously difficult?
No, I think it's just difficult, honestly.
It is weird because I think I've said this to you on our Discord, or I don't know, at some point, where I've been reading up some stuff. Man, is this game just really fucking difficult? And the general sentiment I've seen pop up on places like Reddit is like, the game is so difficult until it's not. It's just something about it eventually clicks and you'll feel like a god doing runs, whatever. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm getting there. I've come so close to killing the last boss. I'm like, I'm definitely better, but the runs I do and I die halfway through, I'm like, man, why did I do that? Like, how did I die to this boss that I've fought so many times? Really good game though. Like that game, it's wild how old that game is. It's 2016-ish, I think. Like,
Into the Gungeon, really?
Yeah, I'm like,
yeah, we had this discussion. Like I was interning at Free Lives and blah blah blah. Yeah,
I'm like, this game is
a good game.
8 years old. I mean, think of how these kinds of games have changed in 8 years.
I swear they put out like a
years.
sequel.
I don't know actually know what they've done since.
I swear there was something. I don't know if it was like a sequel or like a different version that came out on different platforms or something like that. Let's see. A platform sequel called Exit the Gungeon was released in 2019.
Oh.
A platforming game.
I do not know anything about that game. I can't tell you I've ever heard of it.
Exit the Gungeon is a bullet hell platform game. Oh, it's only on... No, it is on consoles. It was on iOS first, but now it's on consoles. This sounds like your cup of tea.
Oh my god, it does.
Oh, it's got a very bad Metacritic score. Sorry, maybe it's not great.
That's so sad. People are like, nah fam, go back to what you know.
Yeah, go back to the pew pew. No more of the jump.
Yeah. Oh. Cool. But yeah, that's what we've been playing. I don't know what's next on the review slate. Maybe there's a bit of breathing room between the next.
I mean, it's probably going to be Assassin's Creed when that rolls in. There's little things here and there. I mean, March also has South of Midnight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Was that?
Isn't Expedition 33 as well?
I think those are both. I stand to be corrected. I think those are both April. Don't know if
You
they're
might
both
be
in
right.
March.
And then Doom
Doom's in May.
Doom is May. Yeah. I think we had this discussion last time as well. I think you're right. South of Midnight is like beginning of April, and then Expedition 33 or whatever is end of April. But here before you know it, tell you. Here before you know it.
Yeah. Happens. That's it.
Sure, the light has really changed.
I know. I was just thinking the exact words out of my mouth. Like both of us are now terrible.
Yeah, that low light compensation is really kicking
gone.
in now for both of us. It is.
The wallpaper in my monitor up here is like a dark one. It's not doing many favors.
For this whole episode, all anyone can see if they're looking at my screen is just my screen reflecting back onto my glasses.
There you go. This is how we
time.
make it better. We're just look how well lit I am now. Look how dark I am now.
Are you? Oh no. Yeah, that's been episode 266 of Checkpoint Chat. Another quick one, just because of the release schedule and trying to hit some embargoes and stuff. But yeah, glad we could get out some Monster Hunter impressions and, well, I guess a full review, really, with 40 hours behind you. Just ahead of launch. Again, we are the people's review. You waited for us. We understand. And we have delivered once again.
Yeah.
Once again. Thank you so much again for listening. If you are planning to play some Monster Hunter Wilds, please feel free to find Matthew online while I shirk my responsibilities again. And hopefully, if people are keen, we can join up for some hunts. Hope everyone has a great week. Thank you again for listening. And we'll be back pretty soon, I'm sure. So thanks again from me. Thanks from Matty, I guess. I don't know. He's just staring at me. And we will see you next time.
Cool.
Goodbye.
Bye.